1, 2. Okay, my friends, good morning. Boker Tov. We are on the bottom of 25b. As we start the next Mishnah, and today's Daf Yomi is Chav Vav 26 of Maseches Megillah. Says the Mishnah, B'nei Ha'ir, let's say you have the people in a town, Shemachru Rechova Sha'ir, that they want to sell the town square, because what did they used to do with this square? However, they used to do, Rashi says, it has holiness to it, according to this position, because you prayed in it on fast days and mamados. So this people, this town, that they wanted to sell the town square, you could take the money and you could purchase with it a Beis HaKnesses, a synagogue. Beis HaKnesses, let's say you want to sell a synagogue, you can purchase with the money you sell the synagogue. Now that money has become holy. And so therefore you could sell with that synagogue, you can tell, oh, I'm bleeding my head. Okay, you can sell with just before the Daf Yomi, I banged my head, and so I see I'm bleeding a little, which is good, because that means that the blood is not contained inside my head, God forbid, but it's outside, which is a good thing. Okay, so we say the people of the town, the synagogue, they can purchase with it an Aron Kodesh, an ark. Let's say they want to sell an ark. They can purchase with the money, they can use it to purchase the cloths, which they use to hold the Torah scroll. Mitpachos, on the top of 26a, let's say they sell a Torah scroll, Yichud Sepharim, they could use it to purchase Sepharim. Sepharim doesn't mean like Sepharim we have on our bookshelves today. Rashi says it means the Nevi'im Uktuvim, the scrolls upon which they would write on the parchment, the Nevi'im and the Ksuvim. Let's say they sell the Sfarim, Wilkin Torah, they can purchase a Torah scroll with it. Avon Machru Torah, but if they sold a Torah scroll, then Yichud Sepharim, then they can't use it to purchase the Nevi'im Uksuvim. We're going to go in reverse now. Sepharim, if they sell the Sepharim, Yichud Matpachos, they can't purchase the cloth to hold the Torahs. Mitpachos, Yichud Teva, they can't purchase an Aron Kodesh. Teva, if they sell the Aron Kodesh, Yichud Beis HaKnesses, they can't use it to purchase a synagogue. Beis HaKnesses, if they sell the synagogue, they can't use it to purchase the Rachov. And so too with the extra money. Let's say you sold the matpechos for $100 and the Aron Kodesh only costs $50. You can't use the extra money for whatever you want. It also retains the holiness to it. So you can't. So if you sell the matpechos, you can't buy an ark with it. And also with the extra money, you're also not able to purchase this ark. So the Gemara says, B'nei Ha'ir, Shemachru Rechova Sha'ir. Let's say you have the people of the city who want to sell the square of the city. Amar Rav Baruchanan Rabbi Yochanan, you're not allowed to do it. You're only allowed to use the money for a holy purpose. You're allowed to do it, but you can only do it if you purchase something holier with it. That's the position of Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan is the position of Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi Stumta. This is Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi. He is the Stumta. He's the anonymous author, or is consistent with the anonymous author of the Mishnah. However, Chachamim Omrim, the sages say, Harachov ein bo mishum kedusha, that the plaza, the square, has no holiness in it. It has no holiness in it. And what's the reason that the Chachamim say that? The Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi, my time. What's the reason why Rabbi Menachem Bar Yossi says it does have holiness? Because the people pray there. Since they pray there on a tainus or mamados, since they pray there on a fast, or the mamados is when that town had the responsibility to pray in parallel with the people praying in the Beis HaMikdash from their town that week. So they would pray in the square. And so therefore the town square required this holiness to it. The rabbi said, no, that's just a temporary. It wasn't a permanent. That wasn't a permanent a permanent place of prayer. It was just a temporary place. And so therefore it doesn't acquire the same level of holiness. So comes along the Gemara, and the Gemara says, Beis HaKnesses lo chanteva. With a synagogue, if you sell the synagogue, you can purchase an ark with it. Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, Shanu al Beis HaKnesses shel Kfarim. That only refers to the synagogue of a village. You could sell the synagogue of a village and purchase an ark. Well, Beis HaKnesses shel Karachan, but if it's a synagogue of a city, Kivan de Me'alma Asalei, since people come to this, since it's in a city, the people come to this synagogue from all over the world, it belongs to the community, and so therefore they're not allowed to sell it. That's what the Gemara says. So comes along. That's the position of so that's the position of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. What again is this position? That in the synagogue of a city, you're not allowed to sell. Rav Ashi, but Rav Ashi says, "Hi bekinisha the matam mechasya afagav the mayama asu akivan da adati didika asu ibayinim izamnino." Rav Ashi says in matam mechasya, since everybody comes from me, meaning to say I'm the Rosh Hashiva there, I'm the one in charge, I'm the one who makes the decisions. Therefore, it's kind of like mine, and so therefore I can sell it. It's based upon my opinion, and so therefore, if I want to sell it, I could sell it. Meisvei, so Gemara challenges that teaching of Rabbi Yonasan that you're not allowed to sell the synagogue of a large city, even to purchase something holier than it. So the Gemara says, Meisvei, we challenge this idea. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, Ma'asu based like Knesset Shel Torsayim. There was a synagogue of the Torsayim, and who are the Torsayim? These were these like people, these craftsmen, these copper workers. Shahaya b'Yerushalayim, and this synagogue was in Jerusalem. And Shemachru Rabbi Eliezer, that they sold this synagogue to Rabbi Eliezer. Also about Kol Tzarchon, Rabbi Eliezer did whatever he wanted with it. So we see from there, Bahasam the Krachei Havu, that city was that synagogue was in a city, and yet they still sold it. So we see from here that Rabbi Yonasan is not correct, or it's a question of Rabbi Yochanan. They're selling the synagogue of a city. Gemara explains, no. That was the synagogue. That was a small synagogue, the Inuakdu, and they made it for themselves. So it was like a private synagogue. So therefore, they were allowed to sell it. Another challenge for Rabbi Yonasan. Meisvei, what about, it says in the Torah about the laws of tsaras. What are the laws of tsaras on a house? Just like there could be tsaras, the skin disease, the spiritual disease that afflicts the body, that just like that could be on a person, we call this tsaras. It'll also be on a house. And the house would have to be destroyed if it has tsaras. But the pasuk, it says when it tells us about the tsaras on a house, it says "Nasati nega tsaras with base eretz achuz aslem." I'll place an affliction of tsaras in the house in the land of your inheritance. From here we see that tsaras can only come on a house that was something that you were able to inherit, your ancestral land that you owned. So, but if it's not something that you own, then it can't be the ancestral land. It can't be the laws of tsaras. So the Gemara challenges Rabbi Yonasan from a brayso about this teaching, because it says with base eretz achuz aslem, which teaches us achuz aslem mitame ben gayim ve'en Yerushalayim mitame ben gayim. The brayso says only land that you own can be mitame, but it can become tamei, but Jerusalem cannot become tamei. Why can't Jerusalem become tamei? Because nobody owns Jerusalem. Jerusalem was not given out to people to own. It wasn't divided up according to this position. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Anilo shamati al makom mikdash bovad." He says, no, Jerusalem can't be divided. People own Jerusalem. The only thing that can't be get saras on it is the temple itself. Oh, so for the fact Rabbi Yehuda said the only thing that can't get saras is the temple itself. That's because only the temple is communally owned. But that must mean, and this is the question of Rabbi Yonasan, that everything else is not communally owned, and so therefore a synagogue is not communally owned. It should be able to be sold. That's how the Gemara says it. So the Gemara says. So the Gemara explains how bate kinasios bate bidrashos mitamen. So we see from here that a synagogue and a base medrash indeed can become tamei. Amai, why? How de krachanavu? These are from cities, and since they're from cities, they should be owned communally. From the fact they become tamei, it shows it's not owned communally. The Gemara says no. Ema, we have to amend the text. Rabbi Yehuda says anilo shamati on makom mekudash bavad. Rabbi Yehuda says no. The only place that could be that can't get saras is a place that's holy, meaning to say also a synagogue. Okay, so let's go now and talk about this price. And when Tanakama says nothing in Jerusalem could get saras, or Yehuda says no, just the temple or a holy place can't get saras. Tanakama several when it's Chalkli Yerushalayim Mashvatim. The Tanakama is of the position Jerusalem was not divided up amongst the tribes. When the tribes were given all their portions of land, Jerusalem was not given out. Jerusalem is owned communally. That's the Tanakama's position. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda's Rabbi Yehuda's other position, Jerusalem was also divided up to the tribes, and so therefore houses in Jerusalem can get saras. V'putta dahani Tanaim. This dispute relates to another dispute because we have two Tanaim. One Tana is going to say that Jerusalem was divided up, and the other Tana is going to say Jerusalem was not divided up amongst all the tribes. And we see this dispute reflected in two other brises. The first brise, Ma hayavachal kol shel Yehuda. What did Judah have in its portion? They owned Harabayas. They owned the Temple Mount, the Lishakos, the offices, the Zaros, the courtyards. And what was in the portion of Benjamin? The portion of Benjamin was the Ulam, the antechamber, the Heichal, the sanctuary, Ubeis Koche Kadashim, the Holy of Holies, and there was a little strip that went out from Judah's portion and went into Benjamin's portion. And there was an altar built on it. Binyamin and Binyamin the righteous one, he's called righteous because his desire here was totally for the sake of having mitzvah. Every day Benjamin wanted that little strip from Judah to swallow it. He wanted to swallow it. It says, he was hovering over it the whole day. Because Benjamin wanted to wanted that altar in his territory, had this desire, the strong desire to have even more holiness. Therefore, Benjamin merited to be a host for the divine presence. As we see that the Aron Kodesh was in Benjamin's property. And so therefore we see from here that Jerusalem was divided up. Jerusalem was given to Judah. Benjamin had the base of Mikdash, but the rest of Jerusalem was given to Judah. And we see from here that according to this opinion, Jerusalem was divided up amongst the territories, and that's consistent with the position of Rabbi Yehuda. Whereas there's another Tana that says that Jerusalem was not divided up amongst all the tribes. Which Tana is that? The Tanya that according to the Tana, you're not allowed, according to this source, you're not allowed to rent out a home in Jerusalem, not allowed to charge rent, no Airbnb, no hotels to anybody staying in Jerusalem, because nobody owns Jerusalem. You don't own it. You can't charge rent for it. So Rabbi Eliezer Bar Tzadok says, Afro Mito, it's not even a bed. He knows like somebody's going to say, okay, listen, I'm not charging you for the hotel. I'm just charging you to sleep on the mattress. No, you can't even do that. That's not permitted. Afro Mitos. You can't even charge for the use of the beds. So therefore, so this is consistent with the Chacham's position that Jerusalem was not owned by any tribe. Therefore, Oros Kachim, Baliushpizin, Notonosam Israel. Okay, but they've got to get something for their work. So the people who own the homes in Jerusalem and they had the guests staying there, they took the hides, the skin from their sacrifices, and they took the skin as their like gift for hosting them. And Amar Bai Shmamina Orach Aro Mishpach Inish Kulpa Umashcha Ushpiza. Bai says we see from here the proper thing to do is that when you're a guest somewhere, you leave behind the gulpa and the mashla. You leave behind a jug and the hide to your host. Amarabba says, when do we say that you're only allowed to sell a synagogue for something holier than it, or all these things you're only allowed to sell them for something holier, which is the concept of Malam B'Kodesh Ha'imori, that you go up in holiness and you don't go down. But says Rava, there's a very, very important limitation on this principle. When do we say this? Only when the synagogue was not sold by the 7 Tuvei Ayir, by the 7 elders of the 7 Tuvei Ayir, like the council members of the city, the Mamad Anshe Ayir, with the consent of the community. The community voted to say that this is something we want to do. We want to sell it. Then you can only sell it. If they didn't consent to it, you can only sell it for a holier status. However, Achru, Shiva Tuvayir, Mamad Anshe Ayir, but if the Shiva Tuvayir sold it with the Mamad of the Anshe Ayir, they sold it with the consent of the people, then Afilu Mishka Shikra, even to the top of 26 feet, Afilu Mishka Mishta Be Shikra, even to just drink beer and get drunk. That's what Rashi says. Look, notes, but so Shekar Lishtos. You just want to drink your wine all day, your beer. Shop your dummy, you could sell it. As long as the community votes on it, you could sell it. Baruch atah Adonai Elohim shehakol niyeh. No, that does not work for me. Ravina Havoyahu Tiwa Debe Kanishta. Ravina had a little in his property. He had a rubble. It used to be a synagogue. Also, coming to Rav Ashi, so he came to Rav Ashi. Amarle Ma'ul Mizra. He said to Rav Ashi, "Look, this used to be a synagogue, but there's nothing there anymore. Can I plant on it? It's a rubble." Amarle Zil Zabne Mishiva Tuva Ir. He says, "Okay, you want to use it for a farm? It used to be a synagogue. You now want to use it for a farm? No problem. Just have to buy it from the 7 elders of the town, the 7 community leaders, and with the consent of the community, and then you could do it." Rami Bar Abba have Kabani B'nei Knishta. Rami Bar Abba was building a synagogue. He Knishta Tika. So he was building a new synagogue, but there was an old synagogue nearby that nobody was using. So he wanted to destroy it. And he said, "I want to bring the bricks and the beams from the old synagogue and use them in the new synagogue." Yosef Bekami Baile, Adi Rav Chisda. So Rami Bar Chama said, "Oh, but we have a teaching of Rav Chisda. Let's see if it applies." What did Rav Chisda teach us? Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda said, you can't destroy a synagogue until you build a new synagogue. So why did he say that? It was there the reason why you can't destroy the old synagogue until you build a new one, because Mishum Pshiusa, we're worried you're going to destroy the old one, and then you're going to change your mind and you're not going to build a new one. So, but in this case, where you destroy the old one to build a new one, is it going to be permitted? Papa said, no, you can't do it. He came to Rav Huna. Rav Huna says you can't do it. Amarava. So you're not allowed to do that. You can't destroy the old synagogue until the new one is built. Amarava, Haibe Kanishta, Chailupa, Vizabuna, Shari. He says a synagogue, if you want to exchange it, you want to sell it to somebody else, or you want to exchange it as you exchange it or trade it, that's going to be permitted. Ugura, but to rent it out, to use it as like a collateral or as a deposit upon usher, that's going to be prohibited. My time, ironically, since you didn't sell it or trade it, it retains its holiness, and so therefore it's not appropriate for synagogue to be used for that activity. Also about the bricks, to trade the bricks or to sell them, the bricks of the synagogue will be permitted. Uspinu usher, but to just lend them out would be prohibited. Hani mili batikti, and when do we say that you can't lend them out? If it's old bricks, that meaning that they've already been used for a synagogue. But if it's new bricks that have never been used for a synagogue, then there's no problem whatsoever to lend them out. Even according to the person whose position is that as long as you're preparing something with the intent that you're going to use it for something, it attains that level of holiness. But that's Hani Mili, that's only the situation where you're weaving a garment for a dead body, Rahman al-Islam, to use as shrouds. But and so therefore, once it's woven, it's immediately going to be used for a dead body. So that's going to be prohibited. But that's according to the person who says Hazmana Milsi. But here you're just like you're weaving the threads together, and you still have to weave the garment. So it's one step removed. The Lakeor number. Nobody's going to say that this case is prohibited. That everybody's going to say in this case that you can use the bricks which you built, and you can even with the synagogue in mind. You have bricks that you made for a synagogue. You can still use it. You can lend them out because it hasn't attained the holiness of a synagogue yet. So we learned. So okay. So now we go on. So we say, let's say the people from the synagogue want to give it as a matana. Let's say you want to give the synagogue as a gift to somebody else. Pligi bar Rav Acha and Ravina. That's an argument between Rav Acha and Ravina. Chad asar, chad shari. One says it's prohibited. One says permitted. Man the asar. One says it's prohibited. He says bahai tipaka kedushasa. If you're giving it as a gift, you need to first uproot its holiness. A gift, there's no consideration. So you need, like when you do a transaction, there needs to be consideration. Just a gift, you haven't uprooted the holiness from the synagogue. Uman Shari, the one who says it's permitted, because his position is you're getting the benefit by giving it to the person. We have this concept, it's called Tova Sana, the value of the benefit. You're getting benefit by giving this person this synagogue, and so therefore, So therefore, so therefore, it would be permitted to do it. Indeed, you're allowed to do it, and indeed, hadar havile matana bezimni. And so therefore, we'll find that like a present is indeed like selling it. Tana Rabbanan. Now the Gemara brings us into a very important concept. The concept of Tashmishe mitzvah and Tashmishe kedusha. Tashmish means to use, and mitzvah is a mitzvah, and kedusha is for holiness. So Tashmishe mitzvah is where the object was used for the mitzvah itself. And ironically, that's not as holy as something where it's Tashmishe kedusha, where the object was used to support something that's actually a work of holiness. That's the difference between Tashmishe mitzvah and Tashmishe kedusha. Tashmishe kedusha, the item is going to retain its sanctity. So that's what the Gemara is going to tell us about. Tana Rabbanan, the Brisa teaches us Tashmishe mitzvah. Let's say something was used for a mitzvah, nizrakin. It can be thrown out when it's done. Tashmishe kedusha, something was used to support holiness, nignazin. That actually has to be buried. The AOA in Tashmishe mitzvah. What's an example of Tashmishe mitzvah? What's an example of something that's used for a mitzvah? Sukkah, lulav, shofar, tzitzis. All these items, once they're used, when you're done with it, you could actually discard it. The AOA in Tashmishe kedusha. These are the objects that they're support for holiness, and once you use them, you actually have to discard them with sanctity by burying them. To uskme, the bags that hold the sfarim, tefillin, and mezuzos, the bags that hold the sfarim, the tefillin, and the mezuzos. The tikshal sefer Torah, the bag that holds the Torah, the nar tikshal tefillin, or to say, and the bag that holds the tefillin and their straps. All these things are considered tashmishe kedusha. These bags, and when you're done using them, you have to bury them. Amarava mereish avamina hai kursia. At first, I thought that this kursia, which Rashi says this was a bima, a platform that they would put the Torah scroll on. I thought it was tashmish to tashmishil. I thought it was just the tashmish to tashmish. I thought it was just help supporting the thing that supports the Torah scroll, because they would put a tablecloth on the bima or a cover, and so therefore the bima was not itself holding the Torah scroll. And so, but that's what my first opinion was. And that you could therefore just vishari, and it would be permitted to discard of it. But kivan de chazina de mosiv sefer Torah. But then I saw sometimes they put the Torah scroll directly on it. So therefore I said amina tashmish. Therefore I said tashmish kedusha hu ba'aser. Therefore I said it's a tashmish of holiness, and therefore it's prohibited. At first I used to say hi prisa. At first, I thought this prisa, Rashi says, is a curtain that you put around the ark inside the ark. At first, I thought that was a tashmish, the tashmish. It was once removed and therefore permitted to discard. Even the chazina, the then I saw that sometimes you fold it up and you put the Torah scroll on it directly. Amina tashmish kedusha. I said it's the tashmish of holiness for us, and it's going to be prohibited. Amar Rava says, "Hi tivusa de irpat." So Rava says, "This teva, this ark, the irpat, that it became ruined. What can you use from it? Mi'avda teva zutarti, and shari. To make from it a small ark will be permitted. Kursaya also, to make from this ark into a bima, which you put the Torah on, is going to be prohibited because it's lesser holiness." Rava says, high priest the vela. These are, let's say you the deboa, high priest of deboa. So you have these curtains of the ark that became faded. The priest was sifrei shari uchumash and asar. If you want to take it and use the curtain to as a curtain for another, for sifrei, which means to say for the neviim and ksuvim, that will be permitted. But chumashim is each individual scroll of the 5 books of Moses, but they're not yet sewn together, like the Bereshis, the Shemos, etc. That will be prohibited because it's less holy. Amar Rava, Hani. So Rava then taught Hani Zebili de Chumashi. This is these things that would hold the Chumashim in them. That basically, like these boards that like a shelf that holds the Chumashim, for example. Or the boxes that hold the Torah scroll, Tashmish kedusha. They're considered to be something that's tashmish kedusha, and therefore it have to be buried. V'nignazin. So the Gemara says, Pshito, it's obvious. No, you might have said, Hani lava covenant. We didn't make this. Doesn't have any honor to it. But when Turi ba'alma covenant, it's just to protect it from getting damaged. Kamash Mulan. No, it's considered holy, and you can't just discard it. Ahu be'kanishta. Do you die? Romi dehave pasich lahu idrana. So there was dehave machas b'meis. So there was a synagogue in Rome that opened up into a room where there was a dead body there, and Avabah Kahani Lamayo Utzluyas, and the Kohanim wanted to pray in the adjoining synagogue, but it opened up into the room with the dead body, and the ritual impurity from the dead body would transfer into their room. So they were concerned about this. Also, Amrullah Rava, they said to Rava, what are we supposed to do? Amrullah Dau Tevusa Usfua. So he says, take this ark, which was made to be stationary, and place it between the two rooms, and it's a wooden ark, which is made wooden utensil, which is stationary. And that will be good enough to stop the holiness of the ark of the ritual impurity from transferring from one room to another. But it wasn't so simple, because the Rabbanan said to Rava, yeah, he said, but this ark, sometimes you move it when there's a Torah scroll on it, and then you move. It's considered to be a utensil that you move when it's full, when it's empty, and so then it's a problem. So he says, oh, if that's what you do. And then you have no possibility. Then you can't do it. The Kohanim can't pray there when there's a dead body in that room. Amar Mar Zutra, we learned Matpachos Safarim Shabalu. Let's say you have the cloths for a Torah scroll that were faded. You can use them as a shroud for a dead body. That's considered the best way to bury them, or that's considered burying them properly. Amar Rabba, say for Torah Shabalu. Let's say you have a Torah scroll that faded. You bury this Torah scroll with a Torah scholar. What a beautiful idea. Just pause and repeat that. You have a Torah scroll that's faded, you take it and you bury it with a Torah scholar. Meaning, even if the Torah scholar is not the greatest scholar in the world, he just knows Mishnayos and Braisos. He doesn't know the whole Shas, Rashi says. It's still enough to bury a Torah scroll with him. He buried this Torah scroll in a kli cheres, a pottery jug, because that's going to prevent it from disintegrating quickly. Because it states, you should place it in a pottery utensil so it should stand for many days. This refers to after Jeremiah, when Jewish people were being exiled from the land. Jeremiah told Baruch ben Neriah that we're going to buy land and you're going to write me a contract, and I want you to put it in to a pottery utensil so it'll be here for many generations to come. And I'll just say this last line because it's so meaningful to me, especially we just started a yeshiva. Amar Rav Papi Mishmei de Rava mi be kanishta be Rabbanan shari mi be Rabbanan b'nei kanishta aser. He says you can take a synagogue, which was a place of prayer, and you can turn it into a base medrash, turn into a yeshiva. That would be permitted, but to take a yeshiva and to turn it into a synagogue, that's prohibited, because we see from here that yeshiva is the holiest. You can go up in holiness and not down. So according to Rav Papi, in the name of Rava, that you're allowed to take something from holiness, go up in holiness and not down. And so therefore, he allows you to sell a synagogue, to take a synagogue and transform it into a yeshiva.